What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with Astro DFS, bringing you the Week 14 cash and GPP picks. So this is cash plays, tournament. You're looking for a larger field type of plays to where it's going to have lower ownership, but the upside could be there, right? So let's go over it. We're going to do it a little differently. Lately, I've been going over positions. Gonna try to change it up and just go game by game and go that way. So for the Jets, Miami, not really interested in Rodgers or Tua. What I am interested in is the running backs. Devon Achane, with Tua being in there, the numbers are crazy for Achane, right? 20 points the last 3 games. If you count, week 9 in Buffalo, that's the last 4 out of 5 games that he's had 20 plus points, right? The only one was the Rams. Obviously, the change with Tua coming back in week 8, I mean, he has just been phenomenal, right? But he is getting up there in price at 8,200. I still think is a really good play. And then Braylon Allen at 5K. Breece Hall is doubtful. Usually that means that a player is out. So if you're looking for a nice value piece on this slate, Braylon Allen at 5K looks to be a pretty good play. Now for wide receiver, no one really in cash for me. I think Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, 2 tournament plays for me at wide receiver. I do think Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle are in play, right? Their numbers compared to Hill and Adams are both very comparable, but I think Hill and Adams just stand out, right? Sauce Gardner going to be out for the Jets, so Tyreek Hill has that advantage. Devontae Adams has a really good matchup against Miami being in the slot. So I like those 2 guys. In tight end, the only one I'm looking at for tournaments is Juanu Smith. Now CJ Mosley is out. And Juanu Smith has kind of been a just workhorse for him lately. 23 has been the lowest fantasy points he's gotten in the last 3 games. 3 touchdowns in those games as well. So Juanu Smith is a tournament play for me. I just think there's a lot better plays on the slate at tight end. Plus his price point is making it, not as good to play. So that's it for the Jets Miami. I don't really have any interest in the defenses as of right now. Jets maybe, but with Sauce out, I don't love it. Going on to the Atlanta-Minnesota game, I think both quarterbacks are in play. Now, if we're talking cash, I think Sam Darnold is a great cash quarterback on this week. Just a really good matchup against Atlanta. They're home. You kind of see Sam Darnold's payoff the last 3 weeks for his price point against, Arizona's defense has been playing good. I think they're bad, but they're playing good. Against Chicago's defense, which without Jaquan Brisker has been not as good. And then I'd say a pretty good Titans defense, even though they just got blown out by Washington. But Sam Darnold, the yardage has been crazy since week 7. Over 220 passing yards in all of these games. The passing touchdowns, right, comes there. The run game hasn't been as efficient as I think Minnesota wants it to be. So it seems like Sam Darnold is closing out drives himself. And we did get kind of worried that Sam Darnold was turning the ball over quite a bit here. The last 3 weeks, he's kind of locked it up. So I think he's a great play at home against Atlanta. Kirk Cousins more on the tournament side. I think it's a good opportunity with him with Stephon Gilmore out for his wide receivers, which we'll talk about shortly. But I don't think he's a cash play per se. I think there's, better paying up for someone like Sam Darnold or a pay down option we'll talk about soon. Running backs, I really don't have any interest in either one of these running backs. It looks really, really tough. Minnesota's played running backs quite well. In Aaron Jones, I mean, if he's not getting a touchdown, it seems very hard for him to hit that value return, which at 6.5, you look at it, he needs, 3 times value. If you're looking for 3 times value at 6.5, he's hit it three games this season. So his price point is just high. There's a lot of good plays at running back this week. I don't think either one is play. Now, wide receiver is a complete different story. I think Justin Jefferson and Drake London are both cash plays for me. Justin Jefferson, top 3 receiver, I believe, versus zone coverage. Drake London, just a good matchup with Stephon Gilmore out. Brings a little more opportunity his way, so I like that one. And then Jordan Addison for tournaments is the only other wide receiver I'm looking at. You could take a shot at Darnell Mooney or Ray McLeod, but I'm looking at someone like Jordan Addison who, he's gotten a better role as of late, right? You look at the targets. The last 3 weeks they have been higher, so I do like Jordan Addison for his price point. The other Atlanta receivers you could go for, I'm not really as interested in there. For tight ends, I think TJ Hockenson, if you want to put him in your cash lineup, just because of the potential he has with how good the wide receivers are, and I guess the matchup, I'm not as high. I just know the ownership is going to be there for him. So far, no touchdowns since returning to the team. At 4,300, if you want to go Hockenson, you can. Not really interested in the defenses. Next, the Saints and the Giants. I like Derek Carr in tournaments. I think Derek Carr's a really good tournament play here. Giants dealing with some secondary injury issues, so that's one to watch for. Drew Lock, with how bad the Saints secondary is, I think he could be a tournament play, but with Malik Neighbors out, I just don't want to go that route. So Derek Carr, I kind of like in tournaments, not really needing in cash. Running back Kamara is yet again a cash play. It's just the volume he continues to get, right? 29 opportunities last week. 6 targets, 23 carries, 112 yards. Guess what? When is the last time we've seen Kamara get a touchdown, right? He got all his touchdowns in the beginning of the year. He has not gotten them lately. And he's still putting up some pretty good fantasy numbers. 2 games over 100 yards, some tougher matchups. Last week was a good matchup against the Rams. Cleveland's been up and down. Atlanta, pretty good against running backs. So he's had a tougher schedule, but the touchdowns have not been there. Taysom Hill is out now. Yet another injury for the Saints offense. So I really like Alvin Kamara in this week. If he gets a touchdown, he definitely pays off. Tyron Tracy is a good tournament play for me. The Saints have been just getting worse and worse against the run, it seems like. Now the Giants haven't been the most efficient running the ball. Last week against Dallas. Did not fumble. He did not fumble. But 9 for 32, gets the touchdown, which helps him out, but wasn't his best game. Devin Singletary getting some work in that one. So he's more of a tournament play for me. And then for wide receivers, I'm looking at 2 guys. Neither one of these are cash. I'm just looking at them in tournaments. Wan'Dale Robinson, if Malik Neighbors is out, I think is in a great spot. If Malik Neighbors is in, I'd rather go the Darius Slayton route. And then MVS for the Saints. Yet again, Taysom Hill out, so somebody's got to get the ball. MVS has gotten a majority of his fantasy work via man coverage. So guess what? The Giants run more man than zone. So I'm going to take my shot on MVS in tournaments this week. So I think he's a good tournament play there as well. And then for tight ends, you could, I have Foster Moreau just because of, yet again, the Taysom Hill. But the Giants are one of the best defenses versus tight ends. It's between them and the Lions. But on the other side is Daniel Bellinger at 2,700. It is a risk. I'm not going crazy over it. But the Saints haven't, they're a mid-tier pack. This is Drew Lock. This isn't DeVito. This isn't Daniel Jones. This is Drew Lock. So the quarterback targets are going to be different, right? And we saw it kind of last week. Theo Johnson, 5 for 54, 10 points. Granted, it was on a Thursday slate, so the pricing wasn't there. But, I mean, for a guy at 2,700, if he gets you 8 points, 7 points, I mean, it's not the greatest payoff, but at his price point, it allows you to pay up for some other players if you wanted to. I do think if you want to take the route Malik Neighbors is out and go with the Saints defense because it's Drew Lock in that offense, you could go that route. I don't have a problem with it. Moving on to Carolina and Philly. Now, Jalen Hurts, cash quarterback for me this week, right? It's just a safe floor for him at home. You look at his numbers this season. They've been impressive, right? The floor for Jalen Hurts, you go and look at all these games, the floor for Jalen Hurts this season has been 15 points. That has been the floor, right? 14 passing touchdowns, but guess what? That's not where he's getting all his touchdowns. He's getting quite a bit of rushing touchdowns now. Everyone is going to be on Saquon. If you want to get leverage on Saquon, you play Jalen Hurts. That's how you get leverage on Saquon. Now, do I think you could play Saquon and Jalen Hurts? you're spending a lot of salary. If you could somehow make it work, you pay down at tight end, you pay down at running back. You could go that route. I don't recommend it at all, but there is the potential that Jalen Hurts and Saquon combine for like 60 just by themselves. So there is that scenario, but you are paying a hefty price because Saquon Barkley is 9K this week. Not interested in Carolina running backs at all. I think Jonathan Brooks is only going to continue to get more carries, even though Carolina just extended Chuba Hubbard. I think Brooks is definitely going to play a role going on. I will say a play I do like. I always say this: if you're targeting a run team, right? In this instance, you're targeting Philly's run game, which is Saquon Barkley. I like the backup running backs props. I love it. Granted, his price is 5K, which is ridiculous. If you look at his prices before, it's kind of ridiculous he's at 5K. But he's at 5K this week. Really good matchup against Carolina. I think, if Philly does take a big lead, they're going to go Gainwell. They're going to rest Saquon. So he has that potential to get some points. So I will throw that out there. Wide receiver, neither one of these guys are in cash, but A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. If you want to look for somebody on the Carolina side, it's really a coin flip between Adam Thielen and Leggett, but I would go Leggett, but it is a tough matchup. I think A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith for tournaments, you could go there. I don't think with how good Philly should be able to run the ball, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are going to have ceiling games. They're going to, if Carolina does what they've done and they play other teams pretty damn good, it could be that scenario, right? It could be that Philly has to pass the ball more than they expected, and they should have success if they do pass the ball quite a bit. I'm just not willing to take that chance that Carolina's defense is going to stop Philly and their offense is going to continue on this roll. So that's why they're both tournament plays for me. At the tight end position, Calcaterra at 3,500 I think is a good tournament play for me. I'm going to put him in cash in guys I'm looking at in cash, right? If I want to pay down at somebody, the worst defense versus tight ends, a guy that's had some success, we've seen 8.8 at 3.2, 10.7 at 2.7. He's had some success at his price point. He is up there in price at 3,500 now. But I do think it's a good pivot to get some type of exposure against a defense that's the worst against tight ends. So, yes, Philly's defense at 3,700 I think is very much in play for me this week. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, I don't have a lot of exposure as of right now going into this game. I don't think either quarterback is really playable for me. Running backs, you could go the Najee Harris, Jalen Warren route. I think both those guys are playable. Cleveland dealing with some defensive injuries. So if you wanted to go that route, Jalen Warren had more success when they just played a few weeks ago. 5 targets, 11 rushing attempts, and a touchdown in there. So I would go Warren over Najee, but I think both those guys are playable. At wide receiver, tournaments, George Pickens is there at 6,800. Jerry Jeudy is a tournament play as well, but I would prefer Elijah Moore, just a better matchup for Moore than Jeudy in this one. And George Pickens, a really good spot at home, plays very good versus man coverage. Now, outside of football, some stuff's going on between the Steelers and the Browns, and George Pickens is involved, so maybe Cleveland makes it a necessity to make sure Pickens doesn't do good. But I don't think you have to go there, but his numbers versus man are ridiculous. But his price point is up there, which is why it's not a cash play, it's a tournament play for me. And then at tight end, as of right now, I'm just not too interested in him. I do like Pat Freiermuth, but I do think this could be a Darnell Washington situation to where Darnell Washington's got some volume. That's the way Arthur Smith runs his offense. I kind of like Darnell Washington more at 2,800 than Pat Freiermuth at 3,800. So that's kind of it there. Steelers defense has got to be in play at 3,500. I'm not big into going on a bunch of data. I'm just going to say they're playing Jameis Winston. Week 12 against Jameis, they had 7 points. Granted, you paid what you would have paid, but that was a showdown, so can't really say what the price would have been, but 3 turnovers in that game. We've seen Jameis getting pressured quite a bit lately. 2 pick sixes last week. So getting some exposure to the Pittsburgh's defense, especially in cash, is very doable if you can afford it. Now, moving on to the Vegas Tampa Bay game. Both these quarterbacks are tournament plays for me. I like both. I don't love the ceiling for Aiden O'Connell. If you're playing him, you're hoping he gets 13, 14 points in this one. You're hoping. Baker Mayfield, you're hoping the Vegas plays a run really good, right? Bucky kind of banged up, but it seems like he should be good. But even if Bucky's out, you still have Rashard White there. You still have Sean Tucker, who's had his moments this season. So I don't think Baker is really a cash play. It's a good matchup for him. They're at home. I mean, Baker has just put up some really good fantasy numbers this season. He really has. His floor, 9 and 8 in 2 of his games this season, which isn't great. And he's at, one of his higher prices we've had him. But, I mean, him and Mike Evans together is good, right? Obviously, the last 3 weeks, he's only gotten 2 passing touchdowns in that, so it has been lower in the passing. But it seems like they just have been trying to get the run game going. So I would prefer Baker as a quarterback in this matchup than Aiden O'Connell. Running back, you're watching the statuses of Bucky Irving and Alexander Mattison. If both those guys are in, you could throw out a handful of names as tournament plays. Bucky Irving being a tournament, Rashard White being a tournament. If Bucky's out, you could go Sean Tucker as a tournament play. If Alexander Mattison's out, we already know Zamir White's out. McCormick, Abdullah, both those guys are playable. I don't think either one stands out more than the other one in this matchup. Abdullah kind of seems like the more receiving back role, so I would prefer him against Tampa's run game. So none of those guys are cash. Now for wide receiver, Mike Evans is cash. I think at 7,200, really good matchup versus Vegas's secondary. Last week, 28 points, right? Very, very clear. Mike Evans is back against Carolina, right? And that's when the team had to compete. Against the Giants, they just used the run game pretty much, right? And that's his first game back. In a very close game, Evans has a Mike Evans game, right? And Mike Evans is still chasing his 1,000-yard seasons. He's only got, 4 games, somewhere around there to hit 1,000 yards, and he's at 500. So if they're going to continue this, there's a good chance that Mike Evans is getting fed the ball quite a bit. Jacoby Myers, I think, is in a good spot at 5,600 against Tampa. I, yet again, would watch the injury status of this one, but I don't think you have to go there in cash. I think he's a good tournament play. If you want to go there in cash, I have no problem with him. I mean, between him and Brock Bowers, both these guys are being fed the ball quite a bit. And DraftKings really isn't adjusting Jacoby Myers' price at all. Really hasn't had touchdowns. He's been getting it all through the receiving game, not the scoring game. And then Sterling Shepard at 4K, I'll mention as a good value piece in my opinion. I think he's just got a good matchup against Vegas, right? Tight ends, Brock Bowers is got to be a easy cash play for me. He is a cash play for me. If he's a cash play for you, that's a different story, right? I just think the target share he's getting, it's a good matchup against a Tampa defense that's been getting beat by tight ends all season. Over the last 3 weeks, Brock Bowers has gotten 40 targets. A tight end has gotten 40 targets in 3 games. Now, granted, you can say someone like David Njoku just got 17 targets, but, I mean, yeah, there's not much more I need to say about this. You see a Miami team that, in my opinion, has played tight ends pretty poorly. A Kansas City team that's a bottom defense against tight ends. Denver was a pretty good damn team against tight ends. But you're facing Tampa Bay on the road, bad defense against tight ends. So at his price point, you got to consider it. Like, I think it was a good reference made. Someone said that if you're looking at tight end prices, you're looking at them as versus wide receivers. So you're finding wide receivers around like Drake London, stuff like that, and you look at the numbers they're doing versus someone like Brock Bowers. Would you rather play him or Bowers? So Cade Otton is also a tournament piece for me. I do think, these are 2 defenses that are just terrible against tight ends. Cade Otton has not gotten the love since Mike Evans has returned. It is Mike Evans. if there's a game where he can bounce back, right? Carolina was one. He got 7 targets, 4 for 20 in that game. If there's a game where he can bounce back, it is this one. But it doesn't get easier for him after this. It's just, with Mike Evans there, it's really hard to want to overly play Cade Otton. And then Tampa's defense, 3,600 against Raiders. I would also look at that one for a defensive play this week. Moving on to the next one, Jacksonville and Tennessee. This one is interesting to me. So Trevor Lawrence, we already know, is pretty much done for the season. Will Levis is in a good spot against Jacksonville, whose defense is just bad against everything. Everything. I want to get exposure to some part of this Tennessee offense. Some. I will say Mac Jones, I am watching the injury statuses of Tennessee secondary. They possibly are going to be down 2 corners. I'm not saying I like Mac Jones more than Will Levis. But if you're looking for a good pivot play, for the same price, Mac Jones has to be worth a shot this week. I'm just going to say it. He is worth a pivot if you're looking to get a quarterback with upside, right? He's got, with upside, they play from behind. They scored 20 points against Houston's defense. He got 20 points, and they got 20. He's got to have upside against a Tennessee secondary that's going to be down 2 corners possibly. I'm just going to say it. Now, running back, Tony Pollard is a cash play at running back for me. At 6,400, right, games they're in the game, he's getting work, right? You look against Washington, he's not going to get work when they're down by, what? It was like 28-7, 28-3, 28-0, something like that. They were just, yeah, that got over quick. Against Houston, where that game was close, he got a lot of volume. Against Minnesota, where they were down quick, didn't get back into it. Chargers, same thing. New England, get some volume. Detroit, he surprisingly got that much volume with how Detroit scored their points. But you look at games where they've been close and he's been getting work. This game should be close. I like Tony Pollard in this one to maintain kind of that higher volume at running back. Wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., I think is easily playable this week. I don't know if you need him in cash when you have Calvin Ridley $100 cheaper, but if you want to pivot off Calvin Ridley in the same game, Brian Thomas for $100. Yet again, Tennessee there's a pretty good chance they're down 2 corners, so you got to factor that in. You also have to factor it's Mac Jones, so that's a risk you have to take as well. But Calvin Ridley's in a really, really good spot against his former team. So, we just saw what Jerry Jeudy did against his former team. Calvin Ridley's time in Jacksonville was not great. So, at 5,700, I'm looking at Calvin Ridley as a huge cash play. And then I will yet again, I said it last week, I said it the week before, and I said it the week before, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has to be in your tournament player pool. There's not a lot of people playing him. And he is getting touchdowns. He has 8 touchdowns. He has 20 receptions this season. Out of those 20 receptions, 8 are touchdowns. He is a tournament play. His price is up there, though. It is 4,700. You're not getting him at 43, 41, 36. You're getting him almost at 5K. That is a factor. But his touchdown upside is ridiculous. It is just crazy. So in my opinion, he has to be in your tournament player pool if you're playing 150 lines or more, right? If you're that much of a madman and playing more than 150, go for it. But you have to have some type of exposure in big tournaments like that. Going off to tight end, Chig's worth a punt at 3K just because it's a good matchup against Jacksonville. The cheapest guy on there, right? You go and look at even Tyler Boyd at 3,600. You're getting Chig at 3K. So if you want the ultimate punt play for Tennessee against a bad Jacksonville defense, if there's a game for Chig to have a good one, it's this one, right? So kind of look at his numbers this season. Really hasn't had too much success. So, that's why he's a huge punt play for me. I don't think if Tennessee's secondary is healthy, they're playable. But I'm not really interested in either defense. Seattle, Arizona, surprisingly, like I was higher on 2 weeks ago when they played. This game was just so disappointing. It's probably going to be disappointing again, or it's going to be the game that I thought it was 2 weeks ago, and these guys are going to have amazing games, and I'm just going to, cry on a Sunday. I honestly don't have a lot of exposure in this one. If I were to take a quarterback, it's Kyler at home. The rushing upside. I will say what is interesting though at running back, Ken Walker seems like he's probably gonna miss the game. If he suits up, obviously this isn't. I'm not playing Ken Walker at his price point. I'm not playing him. But Zach Charbonnet's got to be worth a look if Ken Walker's out at 4,800. We've seen Zach Charbonnet have some success this season, especially when Ken Walker was out. Had some success against some pretty good defenses against the run. So he's had some success this season at 4,800, right? We're going to talk. We're getting really close to talking about the ultimate value play at running back this week. But Zach Charbonnet at 4,800 has got to be worth a look if Ken Walker's out. Wide receiver DK Metcalf is who I'm looking at. Marvin Harrison, 12 targets in that game, right? They said they were going to get him the ball. They did. 12 targets and only 60 yards, though, is very, very disappointing. To me, does get a touchdown. Doesn't really pay off for his price tag yet again. We're needing that 3x value, and he's just not getting it, even though he goes down in price. He's the same price as last week, but not really interested in him this week. Kind of DK Metcalf is the only one. But tight end, you get Trey McBride for $100 more than Marvin Harrison, and for a guy that has paid off. He really has. Now, granted, his price is back to where we had it in the beginning of the season. Kind of had some more disappointing games, but I mean, he's been getting 10 plus points quite a bit, and we've seen him the last 2 weeks get 27 targets, and he's paid off in the yardage, right? Has not gotten a touchdown though. He's got a rushing touchdown against the Bears, has not got a receiving touchdown. So if you want to get someone to put with Kyler, I would just go Trey McBride. Keep it simple. It seems like Kyler is going back to relying on Trey McBride more, trying to get that connection with the other receivers, including Marvin Harrison. It seems like McBride is kind of the guy there. So no interest in the defenses in this one. The Bears in San Fran, this is a game I like. I like Brock Purdy and I like Caleb Williams. I have both these guys as cash play quarterbacks in my player pool. Brock Purdy facing a Bears defense who has just been underperforming. They're really, really, really good in the red zone. They are really good in the red zone. But if teams are scoring, past the 20, the Bears defense isn't as good. Jaquan Brisker not being there is a huge blow to them. It's been that way. Now, I will say Trent Williams is out for San Fran. Nick Bosa is out. Maybe some more injuries for San Fran. We'll kind of see what that looks like. On the Bears side, we're looking at DeAndre Swift possibly being out. DJ Moore. I would expect both to play, but that doesn't guarantee anything. But in this matchup, I kind of like the over, right? For the narrative, Kyle Shanahan is a name that keeps getting tossed to the Bears as being their next, potential head coach. If a trade or he gets released, anything happens like that, as a potential play. So this could be an interesting game of how San Fran plays. So I think both are cash plays. But I will say, Isaac Guerendo at 5,400 is kind of my play this week. I'm just looking at Isaac Guerendo, 5,400. When he's gotten some opportunities this season, granted we're not gonna go here. But when he's gotten some opportunities this season, he's made the best of them, right? We've seen Jordan Mason have success. We definitely know we've seen Christian McCaffrey have success. Now, 5,400 against a defense that's gotten beat by the run quite a bit lately. We saw, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery both have success against the Bears. Isaac Guerendo at 5,400 just seems like a put in there. It's going to be very high owned, and you just don't worry about it the rest of the game. DeAndre Swift, if he plays, is in a really good spot. If he is out, we're looking at another value piece. Somehow we're looking at a value piece at 4K of Travis Homer. I don't love it, but he will get the ball a lot. In San Fran, with the amount of injuries they have defensively, and Bears kind of having success with running backs. Look at DeAndre Swift's just numbers, right? Not getting a whole lot of volume. They've used Roschon Johnson quite a bit, but the receiving game he's going to get, Travis Homer is a back that can receive, so I don't take it that way though. But at 4K, right? If DeAndre Swift is out, I definitely think he's a really, really, really good tournament play. If you want to play him in cash, if DeAndre Swift is out, you could play him in cash. I don't have a problem with that. You can definitely pay up at, you can get Saquon easy. You could pay up for, Jalen Hurts easy. You could pay up for Justin Jefferson easy. So that's a route you could take. Wide receiver, I'm looking at Juwan Jennings and Deebo Samuel on the San Fran side. I think this is a good opportunity for both of them here. Juwan Jennings kind of fallen off lately, right, compared to where he had a little bit of a run, but he still got 5 targets against Buffalo in a very ugly winter game. And then with non-Brock Purdy, still got 7 targets. So I do like Juwan Jennings. His price went back down. It's back to $5,200, so it's getting to that price where he's hitting a sweet spot, under the average player salary. So in this matchup, just the target share he gets with Brock Purdy and the opportunities they're probably going to have if they don't trust their run game. Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuel are going to be in. Deebo Samuel's just had a down season. He really has. 38 receptions for 531. And this is with Brandon Ayuk missing time. This is with Christian McCaffrey missing time. And he's just not been getting the ball. I think this one is a good opportunity with CMC out, with Jordan Mason out, for Deebo Samuel to get some rushing against the Bears defense. They're going to find a way to use him in this one. I really like Deebo Samuel. I think it's a good bounce back, high ceiling Deebo Samuel game. And we're getting him at a pretty good price. On the Bears side, I'm just looking at Keenan Allen just because of the matchup he's going to have. DJ Moore banged up, so I'm looking at Keenan Allen on the other side, 600 against San Fran. And then tight end, I think George Kittle's in an amazing spot. Yet again, with the injuries San Fran's dealing with, they're going to rely upon someone like George Kittle to kind of step up as well. Last week was his first down week he's had since week 1, right? He's been on a tear this season. He's had a really good year. 8 touchdowns on the season. Last week, in my opinion, was just an anomaly just because of the weather. And not just the weather. Buffalo has a good defense. I don't want to take anything away from their defense, but the game, the weather for the game was ugly. So I do like George Kittle at his price point too, right? He's cheaper than Deebo. You could go that route, pivot off of Deebo, even though Deebo's not going to have ownership. But if you want to go that route, but San Fran really quick, just as a whole, like Purdy's 6,200, Garendo's 5,400, Deebo, Juwan 59.52, Ricky Pearsall 45, George Kittle 58. These guys are not priced to where we thought they were going to be priced come this time of the season. You're getting them all at a very discounted price. So I think you can get really flexible with your lineups with how San Fran's offense should be. And then moving on to the last one, Josh Allen, if you want the safety net, Josh Allen is the guy to go to. Seems the offense is going to get healthier in this one. Granted, I don't think he's going to get all the touchdowns he just got last week. But I think it's a good matchup for him. He's just been on a MVP-esque type season, right? Definitely rushing when he needs to, but not overusing the rush like we've seen him in previous seasons. Seen him get some points out of the rush, but some games where he's just not needed to do that. So if you want the safety net, go Josh Allen. I don't think you have to go there in cash. So Stafford, not really interested in. Running backs, I think both running backs are cash plays for me. And James Cook, Kyron Williams, both defenses who have just been overall all season bad against the running back, whether it be on the ground or in the receiving game. I think both running backs are playable, and both the running backs are at amazing prices for me. Going to wide receiver, Cooper Kupp at 7K. He's got a better matchup than Puka does. Puka's going to find a way to get the ball. It's just how McVay uses him. But for the matchup, corner on wide receiver, Cooper Kupp has the best one. So at his price point, $700 cheaper, I like that opportunities for him. And then Khalil Shakir, $5,900. a very good wide receiver versus zone coverage. That's what the Rams are going to run. Keon Coleman should be back, but I think Shakir's in a really good spot. He's been a consistent receiver for Josh Allen all year. 60 receptions, only 2 touchdowns, so he's not getting a lot of these fantasy points. Plus, his price has gone back down. It's below 6K at 5,900. So I think Khalil Shakir's in a pretty good spot here as well. Watching the Dalton Kincaid news, if Dalton Kincaid is out, I think Dawson Knox is in a pretty good spot. If Kincaid's in, I think he's in a good spot. It's just, yet again, it's just been a guy that has not been used the same way he was last year. They haven't needed to. James Cook has taken a step up. Keon Coleman's taken a step up. Shakir's taken a step up. Josh Allen is not turning the ball over. The offense is just better as a whole and not needing to use Kincaid as much. So, not really interested in anybody on the Rams side for tight ends. And then Bills, kind of for the price point at 3,300, I think is worth taking a shot, especially with the interception upside they have this season, and someone like Matt Stafford throwing the ball. I like the Bills at 3,300. So hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys are interested in getting all my cash, tournament value, my bets and props, as well as our FanDuel side of all of this, all that is available on our website for subscribers. So if you guys are interested, check that out. Very cheap subscription package. I will be live tomorrow, I believe, before the slate going over. I will definitely try my hardest to be live before the slate. So check that one out. I will see you guys in the next one.